Hi everybody. This is the video that go with section 11, point slope form continued. So this is actually the second part of section 11 about point slope form. And we're going to do some problems setting up a point slope form equation. So the first problem says write an equation for the line going through 3, -4 with a slope of 3/5. There's a flow chart that I posted in Blackboard that I'm going to share with you now. That guides you through the questions you should ask yourself when you're asked to create a linear function. So the first question is always, do I have or do I know slope? So do you have a constant rate of change? Is there something that's obviously making this linear? Okay, do you have an m value? Something that you obviously know is slope. And remember, it's just that constant rate of change. So if you say yes, then you can go right down to the second question, which is, do I have the y-intercept? But if you say no, look for 2 points, okay? You have to be given some other information. If you have 2 ordered pairs, then you can calculate the slope. The bottom line is you can't go any further if you don't have slope. So you have to be able to figure it out some way. Then you ask, do I have the y-intercept? If you have the y-intercept, then you can jump into y equals mx plus b. You have the slope, you have the y-intercept, everything gets plugged right in. If you don't have the y-intercept, if you say no, then you use point slope form, which is the one from the previous video and the one we're going to be using here. Because you'll have a slope, you'll have at least 1 ordered pair, and you'll be able to plug in. So you can have this up on your screen also as a reference if you want. But again, this is available through Blackboard. So let's come back to the problem. Write an equation for the line going through 3, -4 with a slope of 3/5. Go through that flow chart. Do I have slope? Yep, and it's pretty obvious because it says that it's the slope. So I know that my m is 3/5. Do I have the y-intercept? Well, the y-intercept would have occurred when x equals 0. In this ordered pair, this is not the y-intercept because x is not 0. So I can't just jump in with y equals mx plus b. I have to use point slope form. So point slope form is y equals m times x minus x1 plus y1. I have an m, I have an x1 and a y1 because I do have an ordered pair. And so I'm going to substitute those values. This is going to be y equals 3/5 times x minus 3. Either plus -4 is fine because you're just plugging in for y1. But we know that that's the same thing as just saying -4. So you can just write it as y equals 3/5 parentheses x minus 3 close parentheses minus 4. And the good news is that we can stop because all this said was find an equation. It left it very open-ended as to what kind of format it wanted the answer in. So a point slope is an equation. I can leave my answer just like that. All right, let's move on to the next one. Write an equation for the line going through -2, 5 and 4, -3. Going through the flow chart, do I have slope? Well, I actually don't have slope here. I have 2 ordered pairs. Is that enough for me to calculate slope? Sure, because the slope formula, m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I can label one of these points x1, y1. I can label the other one x2, y2. And remember from previous videos, it doesn't matter which way you decide to label them as long as you're consistent. So if I do my substitution, this is going to be -3 minus 5 over 4 minus -2. The minus minus becomes plus. And this is going to be -8 over 6, which I can see the numerator and denominator are both divisible by 2. They're both even. So if I simplify that, this is going to give me -4/3. So now I do have my slope. I have a slope of -4/3. Do I have my y-intercept? I don't, because neither of these points has a 0 for an input. So they're not the y-intercept. So I have to use point slope form again. Y equals m times x minus x1 plus y1. And I'm going to substitute my x1, y1 since that's what I labeled it. This is going to be y equals -4/3 x minus -2 plus 5. We have to clean this up a little bit because we don't want to leave minus minus. It can be simplified. So this is going to be y equals -4/3 times x plus 2 plus 5. Now, some of you might be asking, if my other point was what I labeled x1, y1, would that be okay? And the answer is yes. So if you did point slope form with the other ordered pair, okay, so I'm just going to put an arrow to show we're using this one now. It would be y equals -4/3 times x minus 4 plus -3, or y equals -4/3 x minus 4 minus 3. And I'm just going to put an or in between. Those are both correct answers. If you were to convert either of these or both of these to slope intercept form, to y equals mx plus b, you should get the exact same equation. So try that. Try doing the simplification, distribute, and see if you get the same equation. You absolutely should. And I can leave any of these answers because all they wanted was an equation. Next example. Write the equation for the line going through 6, -2, and -3, 1. And we're going to add a little bit more to this one in slope intercept form. Make this one a little bit different. So it's not open-ended this time. It's telling us that they want it in slope intercept form. And if you remember, slope intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So in the end, I'm going to have to get it in slope intercept form. But let's go through the flow chart. Do I have slope? Not yet, okay? But I'm going to calculate slope. So slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Choose one to be x1, y1, and choose the other point to be x2, y2. I'm not even going to label them this time. It's going to be 1 minus -2 over -3 minus 6. Minus minus becomes plus, and this calculates to be 3 over -9. But that can be simplified because top and bottom are both divisible by 3, and that's going to give us -1/3 when we simplify. Remember, we're going to write the negative out front or in the numerator. So now I can say, yes, I have slope. But do I have the y-intercept? Neither of these is the y-intercept because, again, the x's are not 0. So I have to use point slope form first. And plug in one of those ordered pairs. So let's do it with the first one. My slope is negative 1/3, x minus 6 minus 2. This is what I would get if I plugged in the first ordered pair. But I'm not done yet because it said in slope-intercept form. I'm going to have to simplify this. We did this in a previous video. We're going to distribute the negative 1/3. So this is going to be y equals negative 1/3 x. I can put this over 1 to make my calculation a little bit easier. This is going to be plus 6/3 minus 2, which is going to be y equals negative 1/3 x plus 2 minus 2. And this one happens to be negative 1/3 x plus 0. And you're free to just not even write the 0. So it's y equals negative 1/3 x. This would mean that my y-intercept is 0, 0, because my b value turned out to be 0. Now, you might be asking, again, from like the previous problem, would it have mattered if I used the other ordered pair? Let's do it. Y equals m times x minus x1 plus y1. I highly encourage you to write and recite the formula, especially when you're first learning it. This way you can commit it to memory and it's easier to plug in for. So this is going to be y equals negative 1/3 times x minus negative 3 plus 1, because now I'm going to plug in the second ordered pair. And now I'm going to simplify this. This is y equals negative 1/3. I'm going to change the minus minus to a plus. This is going to be negative 3/3 plus 1, which is going to be y equals negative 1/3 minus 1 plus 1. And look at that. The same thing happens. I wind up getting y equals negative 1/3 x plus 0. Or, again, we could drop the 0, and I get y equals negative 1/3 x. So I hope you believe me now. It doesn't matter which point you use. You will get the same exact equation. So this will be the equation in slope-intercept form. And last but not least, write an equation for the line going through the point 4, 5, and 0, 2. Do I have slope? No, I don't. So again, I'm going to have to go through and calculate slope first. Write down your slope formula. Choose one to be x1, y1, and the other one to be x2, y2. Okay, I'm just going to happen to go in the same order, but it doesn't make a difference. And so this is going to be 2 minus 5 over 0 minus 4, which is negative 3 over negative 4, but a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So my slope is positive 3/4. Then ask yourself, do I have the y-intercept? I actually do this time. I have it. I can spot the y-intercept. So that means that I could just jump in with y equals mx plus b. So I could just say, oh yeah, y equals 3/4 x plus 2. And I'd be done because I recognize the y-intercept. Now, let's say you have some test anxiety, or you just don't notice that you have the y-intercept, could you still use point slope form with the 0.45? Okay, let's try it. Y equals m times x minus x1 plus y1. So I'm going to substitute my m, which is 3/4, times x minus 4 plus 5. The denominator is the same here, so they're going to divide out, and I'm going to get y equals 3/4 x minus 3 plus 5. Or, for those of you that do want to fill in that step, I'm putting the 4/1, so I get 3/4 x minus 12/4 plus 5, which simplifies to -3 plus 5. And then, when I combine like terms, I get y equals 3/4 x plus 2. So one more demonstration that it doesn't matter which technique you use, there's multiple ways to get to an answer, get to an equation. Not to mention, if you're more of a visual person, there's absolutely nothing stopping you from plotting these 2 points and counting it all out. So if you prefer that, that's always an option. Just realize that that takes longer. So I hope that this all made sense. If it doesn't, or if you have a question, please don't hesitate to contact me, and have a great day.